and Osborne, the well-known long-term fruitarian, shares her love of growing food, the importance of the highest quality fruit, her story of starting her own fruit orchard to become self-sustaining. She shares her most important 5 fruit trees and her amazing insights of choosing the best climate and the perfect property. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Looks beautiful where you are.
Yes, thank you. This is our fruit farm behind me.
Wonderful, wonderful, yeah.
So, thank you for joining me, first of all.
Well,
It's
thank you for
amazing.
asking. It's a
Yes.
pleasure.
I am very amazed of your journey, that you are a long-term fruitarian, and then at some point you decide to plant your own fruit trees. It's amazing. So I
Yes.
wanted to ask you, when did you start this whole new idea?
Well, it's something that I'd always wanted to do, is grow my own fruit. And it was just finding the right place at the right time. And previous to living here, I'd lived in Glasshouse Mountains in Queensland for 13 and a half years, but we were renting the property. So I planted a lot of fruit trees, but unfortunately the landlord didn't like it. And he came round with his chainsaw once and cut down a lot of the trees. And it was very distressing. And Cappy, my youngest son, was there, and he was distraught because, we'd watched these trees grow from seed or from, seedlings, and then to have them cut down. So it's always something I've loved doing, growing fruit, growing plants. My father, when I was a child, had an allotment. And in the UK, allotments are plots in suburbia that people can rent out to grow their own produce. So I'd grown up with fresh fruit and veggies, and we used to love going down to the allotment, which was a short walk from where we lived, and helping my dad, mostly eating the fruit rather than actually helping doing the hard work. When I got older, before I left the UK, when I was living in the UK, I had a very, very small garden, but I also had an allotment at the same place, the same set of allotments where my father had his. And so I did grow some fruit there, but in the UK, it's a very limited growing season, especially for fruit, maybe more for veggies. So it's always something that I've been interested in because I realized how important it is to grow our own fruit. And then finally, we had the chance to buy our own place, 3 acres in the subtropics, and really start planting. So having a place where we can finally grow fruit and know that, yes, there might be a cyclone, there might be a drought, there might be animals, there might be things beyond our control that do affect the fruit trees, but knowing that no other person really is going to come and say, look, you can't grow that. So it's just been wonderful to actually have a piece of land where we can start growing fruit trees for ourselves and for future generations.
Yes, I also love this idea that to own a land is not a relationship between me and my land. It's more like a relationship between my land and other people because it's protected.
Yeah. And I think it's not, I don't see that we really own the land, because the land can't be owned. It's not that. Just having that security, I think, is really important. We're caretakers in a way. But it's nice to have that security of being able to plant things, and hopefully they will, be able to grow successfully. Yeah.
Yes. So you always grew something. How does it feel? What is the difference when you eat something that you grew?
I think it's exciting because it's a journey. It's a journey, whether you've planted that fruit plant or tree from a seed, or whether it's been a little sort of, baby tree that you've planted. It's a journey, and you're part of that journey, and you watch and you see it grow. And for myself, growing up with children, for my children to be part of that journey, and children love foraging, they love picking fruit, and to see it grow. And we'd have soursops at when we lived at our previous place, and they would take quite a long time because it's subtropical, maybe take a little bit longer than in a tropical location. And my younger son would just go out, would go out every day and watch their progress once the fruit set until it got big enough to finally pick. So there's that journey, watching the trees growing, then they set fruit, and it can be a slow journey. I planted pineapples from seed, and that was a journey. It was nearly 6 years to get a fruit from seed, but what a journey, actually getting the seeds to germinate, because they took 6 months on damp paper towel in a Ziploc bag to actually germinate. And then once they germinated, their first little leaves actually looked like tiny pineapple leaves, which was really, really exciting. And then they started to look like tiny pineapples. But it was just nearly 6 years from the seed germinating to getting fruit. So that was a journey. And I sort of took pictures along the way, and finally getting fruit from 2 of those seeds that germinated. And then those pineapples threw out suckers. So we had more pineapples, plus we had the top from the fruit, so they will continue on. So yes, it's a real journey, watching your fruit grow, watching it develop, and nothing's guaranteed until you actually pick that fruit. You can watch it, and then at the last moment a possum can get it, or it can fall off, or there's a whole host of things that can happen. Because some people think that you plant fruit trees, you get fruit. It's, as you would know, it's a bit of a journey. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's a bit more challenging. But yeah, I think when you grow your own fruit and you follow that journey along and you finally get the fruit, it's not just the wonderful fruit that you get that nourishes you physically and emotionally and mentally. It's being part of that journey that is also, I think, very nourishing. So it's kind of not, often a journey, it's like the importance of a journey is not arriving at the destination, it's the actual journey. And I think that's partly true with growing fruit. It's not just arriving at the place where you get your fruit to eat, it's the journey that gets there that's interesting and exciting.
Yes, especially because we need to be very patient with fruit trees, especially. So if we enjoy every day around our fruits and fruit trees, then we will have success.
Yes, and sometimes there can be a tree that's in bad health. When we moved into our property, there were a couple of trees, because it was 4 months before we could move, and there was 4 months where the property was vacant and it was the dry season, and some of the trees suffered. And just seeing those trees being nursed back to health is fantastic. Because they can be very close to sort of dying, and then you can nurture them and they come back, and that's very rewarding. Whether they then go on to have fruit or not, just getting trees back to health, I think, is part of the enjoyment of growing and looking after fruit trees.
Yes, it's very wonderful to listen to your words and how you really love this kind of life when you are surrounded with plants and you take care of them, and the joy of this whole thing. And it's amazing. Yes. So you said growing our own food is important. Why is it important?
I think there's many reasons, many layers of why it's important. I think one thing is that it's a form of empowerment, because when you are growing your own food, you're not reliant on other people for your food. And it is a journey. A lot of people like myself are on their way to being self-sufficient. I'm not fully self-sufficient yet, but I'm on the way. And my goal is to be fully self-sufficient. But on that journey, you're sort of gradually growing more and more of your own fruit. And so it's this empowerment where you're less and less reliant on other people and other suppliers for your food and for your nourishment. And also you see what goes on, and you control what goes on. You know that you're growing veganically, you're not using animal products, you're not using any chemicals. And for me, that's beautiful, not using any chemicals and being in control of that, knowing that the fruit that you eat doesn't contain any toxic chemicals, it hasn't been sprayed. I think that is very, very important, because even sometimes if we buy organic or unsprayed fruit, we don't know the history of it unless we know the person that grows it. It's a neighbor or a friend, which is wonderful, but we don't really know what's gone on with that. There's a lot of organic fruit coming into the markets these days, and it's hard to truly know, is that fruit fully organic? Is it not? You don't really know unless you grow your fruit. I also think there's the emotional wellness of growing and picking your own fruit, and very much for children. Some of the most precious moments for myself have been with my children, foraging and finding fruit and growing our own fruit, and to see the joy on my children's faces when they pick their own fruit, and when they watch that fruit that's been growing for maybe months and months and months. And I've just got some lovely photos, especially with my younger son, because with my older son, we did a lot of foraging, but we didn't really have our own, fruit orchard. But pictures with my younger son of him picking a pineapple or picking a chocolate sapote, and him getting so excited when the fruit was ripe. So I think it's an emotional nourishment that we get from growing our own fruit and picking our own fruit. And I think we are by nature foragers. Now, these days, we can't really go out into the jungle, most of us, and forage our own fruit. So the equivalent is growing our own fruit and picking it. And I think because we are innately foragers, we have that instinct, and we have an emotional and a mental satisfaction, and we have a joy to pick our own fruit, because if we didn't, we'd have died out. If we didn't like going out and foraging and picking our own fruit. So I think there's many, many levels of why it's important to grow our own fruit. But I also think it's not necessarily accessible for everybody. So I think we all do the best we can. And I think people that don't have their own land can join community gardens, find a neighbor or someone in your neighborhood that has a big garden that maybe hasn't got the time or isn't physically able to do a lot of gardening, and you can help them in return for getting some of the produce. So yeah, it's immensely important to me to grow my own fruit. But when I wasn't able to grow my own fruit, I had an allotment, I went foraging. There's ways to still, get that quality fruit, even if you haven't got your own piece of land. And when you do have your own piece of land, it's amazing. Yeah.
What I noticed in our fruit forest, that when I pick a fruit and it's super fresh, it's like a different fruit. There is rambutan, for example. I never was a fan of rambutan, but since I have a rambutan tree which is full with rambutans, I am in love with rambutan. So how do you feel with this?
Yes, because it's perfectly ripe. And that's one of the main challenges with fruit quality today. The other one is the soil quality. But fruit being picked perfectly ripe is another huge challenge, because commercially it doesn't make sense for them to pick all the fruit just as it comes ripe. You'd be picking one fruit one day and one the next. But when you have your own fruit, then you can pick it perfectly ripe. And of course, it's its peak of nutrition when it's perfectly ripe, but it's an experience. Picking a Mamie sapote perfectly ripe from a tree when it's sun warmed, and it can't get any more delicious, and it's an experience. And I think we remember those as experiences. It's not just about eating the fruit, it's a whole experience of having it. And as you say, the quality and the taste of a fruit that's been perfectly picked when it's perfectly ripe is, you can't compare it with anything else. And I think this is why more and more people who are on this diet long term are looking to grow their own fruit, because they realize that the quality and the experience that they can get when they grow their own fruit is superior, even buying the best quality organic fruit. And that's great. And I've done that when I didn't grow my own fruit. But if you're able to grow even just a little bit of your own fruit, even if you have an apartment and you grow tomatoes or you grow raspberries or you grow some other berries in a pot, it's just wonderful. And yes, the ripeness and the quality is very, very important, because when we rely on fruit for our nutrition, or for the vast majority of our nutrition, we need good quality fruit to thrive. And when you grow your own, you're, I think, more guaranteed to get that quality and the micronutrients that we need. So the vitamins, the minerals, and the antioxidants, because we can ensure that our soils are really good. We can build them up, and that will carry over into the quality of the fruit that we grow.
Do you think it has a big role in your long-term successful raw vegan fruitarian lifestyle, that you consume a lot of fresh and homegrown fruit?
Yes, I do think it's very, very important for long-term success. But as I said, not everybody has their own land. And when I didn't have my own land, I just had to ensure that I could access really good quality, organic, non-sprayed local fruits. And I also foraged. So don't be disheartened and think you can't survive long-term unless you have your own land. It makes it easier. And the whole experience is very joyful, I think. It's hard work in a way, growing your own fruit. And it can be challenging, and it can be a full-time job. At the moment, we're in the dry season. So I can spend 6 hours a day watering to ensure the fruit trees are healthy. Fortunately, we have a river at the bottom of the property. So we have a solar pump, and we can pump water, which is invaluable. You know, it's so important in the dry season, and we've had a particularly long dry season. We're coming up in about a month to the wet season, but when it's dry, yes, it's, you know, it can be quite challenging. So yeah, I think it is important, but not vital. If you haven't got your own land, you can still employ strategies to thrive long term on this diet. But the bottom line, whether you grow your own fruit or whether you're sourcing fruit from elsewhere, is really good quality. And when you grow your own, you can guarantee that it's good quality fruit for two main reasons. One, building up your soil. So ensuring that the soil you plant your fruit trees in is a good quality soil. And if your land doesn't have really good quality soil, you can build it up. And I've been amazed. We have neighbours who have been building up their soil for 12 years, and they're still building up. They still put stuff on it every week. And their property, it's like a jungle. It is so lush, so green. Their fruit is just wonderful, because they've built their soils up. So you can build your soils up. And the second thing, you can pick ripe. And that's hugely important, because commercial fruit can't be picked perfectly ripe, because it doesn't all ripen at the same time. It depends on the position on the tree, how much sun the fruit's getting, when the fruit was set, to when it's perfectly ripe. So when a commercial farmer picks his nectarines, for example, maybe only 10% of them will be picked at a decent level of ripeness. And also, fruit is often picked underripe, because it'll ripen if it's climacteric, it'll ripen after it's been picked, and they don't want it to get too ripe before the consumer buys it. So I think to thrive long term on this diet, you need to have fruit that's been grown in good soil and picked perfectly ripe. And when you grow your own, that's far easier to control than when you're buying fruit from other sources. So yeah, for me, it's very important, but not vital. So if you haven't got your own land, you can still thrive, I believe, on this diet, but it's maybe a little bit more challenging to do so.
You settled down in the subtropics, as you mentioned. Do you think what climates are ideal for fruitarian, self-sufficient, life-changing?
I think that depends on the person. Some people really like Mediterranean fruit. They like oranges, they like figs, they like melons. And for them, a Mediterranean climate would be ideal. A lot of people prefer the tropical fruits. So for them, a tropical location would be ideal. For myself, I always thought if I moved to far north Queensland, it would be in the tropics. So I could grow rambutan, which I love, and durian, which I also love. But this property became available, and it's subtropical. It's actually, the latitude is tropical, but it's high elevation. And so it becomes subtropical. And for me, I always thought, no, have to be tropical. But having lived here, I really appreciate this climate because I can grow a wide range of fruits. I can't grow the true tropical fruits. Well, I have got baby durians, but they're not going to fruit. I can't grow rambutans. I can't grow mangosteens. I can trying to grow Chempedek, but that might be a little bit. And I'm also trying to grow rambutan, but again, I might not be able to, but I can grow so many subtropical fruits. I can grow mangoes and longans and pineapples and papaya, and so many of my favorite tropical fruits will grow here. With the addition, we can grow stone fruits here, and figs, Mediterranean type figs, grow really well here. So we actually have there's a wide range of fruits that we can grow. And if I want the tropical fruits, it's a 40-minute car journey down the hill, and we can access local durian. We can't grow it ourselves, but we can access it pretty easily. So it's not hard to get those fruits that we can't grow. So I think really the climate you choose, look at the fruits that you love, and what fruits do you feel best on, and what fruits that you really enjoy.
Yes, we chose our location based on this. We wanted to grow durian and other ultra tropical fruits. So we decided to settle down in an ultra tropical, low altitude, hot, tropical, humid area. But it was a decision of what fruit do I want to grow? That was the main question.
Yes,
What is the 5 most important fruit trees that you planted as a fruitarian?
I think oranges is one for me because I love oranges. Oranges are a staple. I don't juice any of the fruit, but I tend to juice oranges with a hand juicer. I leave the fiber in, and if I can access oranges, I will have them every day when they're in season. When I lived at my previous place, I could access fruits from all over Australia, so I would have citrus most days. Here, I can only really access good quality citrus from this location, which is fine because I like eating seasonally. So for me, oranges, I want to plant more and more orange trees so I can have a variety of types of orange. So they're at different seasons. You've got the Valencia, you've got the navels, and you've got the blood oranges, all of which have a different season. So hopefully for a good few months of the year, getting oranges. So yeah, oranges would be one. Mulberry trees is another, because I think mulberries are a superfood. I think mulberries are very high in minerals and antioxidants, so high in micronutrients, and they tend to crop very well. So mulberry season has finished now, but when it was on, I had 6 to 8 weeks of having as many mulberries as I wanted every day for breakfast, which was wonderful. So I do love mulberries. The purple ones are higher in nutrients, but the white ones are super sweet. I can't believe how sweet they are when they're properly ripe and you pick them from the tree properly ripe. It really does taste like they've got added sugar. If I was blindfolded and somebody said, taste this, I'd say, oh, don't eat sugar. That's sugar, because they just really are super, super sweet. So that would be the second one. The third one would probably be avocados, because I think avocados can be a good staple. Like one avocado can have 400 calories. So they make it easier to become self-sufficient in terms of macronutrients. They're also quite high in micronutrients, and different varieties will give a crop the whole year round. So here in Australia, if you plant the early varieties such as Shepherd, then Fuerte, Hass, then the Reed, which is a later one, you can, and leave them on the trees for longer, you can have your own avocados all year round. So I think they're also a great fruit for children because they're a denser fruit. And sometimes when you're sort of like busy and you don't, you're not eating so much, you can just have a couple of avocados, and that's like half your calories for the day. So yeah, avocados would be another one. The fourth one would be figs. Figs are, to me, a delicious fruit. They're also high in calcium and other minerals. They're one of the best fruits for mineral density. They're also a keystone variety of fruit, in that they are very important for the environment. And I'm not just talking about the Mediterranean figs, the native figs. Native figs aren't jammy and luscious. They are more dry and mealy, but they are super high in nutrients, and they can crop several times a year. And they're very important because they will bring animals into an area, and then the animals will be seed carriers. And so animals will come into the area to eat the figs, which often in season when other fruit isn't. And when they come in, they will poop and they will distribute seeds from fruit they've eaten from other areas, and they're very good for regenerating areas, fig trees. So figs would be the fourth. And the fifth one isn't really a tree, but it's a plant, or it's a herb, is the papaya. Papayas will grow and fruit year round. They are super nutritious. I love the red varieties that grow very well here. They don't take long to fruit. They can fruit in 9 months, depending on the climate and the variety. And they're very high in omega-3 for a fruit. Of all the fruits that I've seen that have been tested, they have the best omega-3 to omega-6 ratios. They're also very anti-inflammatory. They have a compound in them that turns off inflammation when that inflammation is no longer useful. There's a compound in the body. So people that have chronic inflammation, something's happened, and the inflammation's great. We need inflammation when we hit ourselves and we get a bump on the head, or when we sprain our ankle and it swells. That's all protection. It's all part of the healing process. But when that goes on longer than it's supposed to, it can turn into chronic inflammation. So papayas are very anti-inflammatory. They have this compound in that will turn off inflammation once it's served its purpose. And they're very easy to digest. They're, for me, one of the superfruits. So that would be the 5. Well, the papaya isn't really a tree, but it's kind of like a tree. So the 4 trees and papaya would be those that are important for me for the reasons that I've explained.
Yes, I love that you plant a lot of varieties to extend the season. And also there are years when this variety doesn't produce a lot and the other produce. So it's a good decision to expand our varieties and always have a harvest from somewhere, and to give attention to have fruit all year round, like you mentioned with avocado and papaya, and also with figs, which is an off-season fruit then, but in your area that produces when you are not in abundance of other fruits.
Yes, and that is mostly the native figs. Now, the native figs are an acquired taste for a lot of people, and something that's interesting that happened that made me realize how important figs are in terms of nutrition. So my younger son Cappy was about 3 or 4, and we'd arranged to meet a friend in Brisbane to have a picnic. And we went to the West End markets, which at that time had about 3 really good organic fruit stalls. So we bought lots of conventionally grown organic fruits, and I was thinking, Cappy's going to be so excited. We had a walk to South Bank to this park. He's going to be so excited because we've got all this really nice organic fruit for a picnic. Put the picnic blanket out, put all the fruit out, and then where's Cappy? And he disappeared. He was under a Moreton Bay fig tree, which is a native fig, foraging figs. And people were looking at this little kid going about, and he'd bring me the fig, make sure it's not got any insects in it. And he chose that. Nobody had said to him, look, Cappy, that's a Moreton Bay fig tree. The fruits on it are very nutritious. They're high in calcium, they're high in iron. He'd never even eaten one before, but his instincts, being raised on a fruit diet, he was off. He was foraging, and he just ignored this organic fruit and went for this native fig. And that really made me think, wow, when our children are brought up on a natural diet and their instincts are intact, he instinctively knew that that fruit was more nutritious than the organic, conventionally grown fruit. So yeah, the native figs, for me, I was like, they're okay. They taste like figs, but they're very dry. But it was more of an acquired taste. But right from the get-go with Cappy, he'd never had one before. He kind of was really enjoying that fruit. So yeah, native figs, a lot of animals rely on them. They're a keystone variety of tree for the tropics and the subtropics. Very, very important. Yeah.
Did this kind of relationship that you have with growing fruit, what did it give to your son in long term?
I think it really helped him appreciate fruit and appreciate that fruit isn't just something we buy from the supermarket or even the organic market. It's something that grows on a tree, and it doesn't just grow, it's a process. And like you mentioned before about the patience, having that patience and watching it grow and getting excited and learning to deal with challenges. Sometimes we had one year, we had these sour sops and they were a couple of weeks off from being perfectly ripe. And the children next door reached over, picked them off and threw them. And we were so sad. And it's dealing with those disappointments. You know, we can grow fruit. We don't always pick it. Things can happen. And that's a kind of emotional maturity to look at that like, you know, things don't always work out the way we would hope they would work out. But, you know, we can deal with that. We can look forward to next year when we get some sour sops. And just when we do get that fruit and just seeing him like mulberry season, like even now, like he's 19 now and he doesn't live at home anymore, but he came up during mulberry season and just to see him, he's just like that little kid again under the, you know, under the Moreton Bay fig tree, picking the mulberries and getting really, really excited about it. And also, I think it gives your children an appreciation and love for growing fruit and planting things and not just relying on shops to get your fruit. And it's a connection. I think growing your own fruit is a real connection with the planet, with the universe, with the trees, and you get a relationship with your trees. I feel so close to a lot of my trees. I've got one mango tree that's come with us over thousands and thousands of kilometers. I've always had it in a pot until I moved here because I never wanted to leave it anywhere, because I bought it when I was as a tiny little seedling when I was pregnant with Cappy. And I had a home birth and I planted the placenta under this mango tree. So it's always been Cappy's special mango tree. And it came with us like 1,700 kilometers when we moved here. And it finally went in the ground after being in a pot for 18 years. And it suffered on the journey. It was on the back of a truck. All its leaves came off. There was a big hole in its bark. And it was just like, I really had to nurture it back. It got its leaves, then they came off. It got some leaves, then they came off. It got some leaves, then they came off. It got some leaves, and then they stayed. And then it was just finding its feet, and a possum climbed up and ripped all its new leaves off. And then that happened again. And so it's been a real journey. I've put a possum, what I hope to be a possum proof enclosure around this tree now, and just watching it's really coming into its own. And I just feel very close to that tree. There's other trees that I just seem to have a real connection with, and yeah, and you just feel like they're your friends. They're special. I believe that plants are sentient, not in the way that we're sentient, because we're mammals. And when people say, oh, plants don't have feelings, plants don't this, they don't have it at the same level as, but we're looking at it from a very human-centric point of view. Because they're different to us doesn't mean that they're not sentient and they don't have feelings, they don't have emotions. And I really believe that plants do. And there's been several scientists looking into this and saying, yes, plants are sentient. They do respond to this. They do have emotions like joy and fear. And Jagadish Chandra Bose was a very famous Indian scientist, and he made this crescograph and he connected it to plants and found that they did respond in very similar ways to humans. So I think that when we love and appreciate trees, we have more friends because they become our friends, which is nice.
Do you plant other fast-producing fruits besides of papayas, like melons or tomatoes or other fruits?
Well, I don't plant tomatoes, but we get loads of wild tomatoes. The birds plant tomatoes. So we have a lot of cherry tomatoes that are really sweet when you leave them till they're really, really red. So yeah, all over the garden, if I want a tomato, and I've never been a really big tomato eater, but these ones are very sweet. So I'll just go out in the garden and walk about and pick them. And then they just keep coming up all year. You can get cherry tomatoes here, which is fantastic. I also grow watermelons. I love melons, but because it's fairly tropical here, regular melons don't do well. They get very mildewy. So I love the orange flesh melons and the honeydew melons. But if I want to eat them, I can't really grow them. I have to buy them. But watermelons grow very, very well here. So I have to plant some more again for this season. But last year I planted some moon and stars, which are an heirloom variety, and they're very pretty because the leaves and the fruit have little yellow splodges on, which look like the moon and the stars in the sky, because it's quite a dark green melon. And they're a beautiful melon. They also keep for quite a while once they've been cut off. And it was funny because I had a picture on, I think it was Facebook, and somebody said, "You've got disease on your melon leaves. They've got all little yellow splotches on." And it was like, no, they're actually fine. That's how they're supposed to be. So I don't plant the tomatoes, they just grow, but I do plant watermelons, which is more of a faster growing fruit crop, but they're really the only ones. The rest are all sort of more long-term trees and bushes.
Do you have bananas there?
Yes, I have bananas. I've got a bunch that are nearly ready to be picked, and we're going to put more bananas in because bananas can be a good staple. I don't generally eat a lot of bananas unless they're homegrown or unless they're very good quality organic, mainly because even organic bananas are gas ripened, and I think that really detracts from the quality of the banana. But yeah, I do really like homegrown, and we have wallabies that visit for food every day, and they love bananas, especially the swamp wallabies. And so most of the bananas get eaten by the wallabies because they come for their little dinner at night. But I still do eat quite a few, and there have been a few days when I have been self-sufficient and I've just eaten from the land, and they have been times when there's been bananas from the garden because they've been a really nice staple, and it's felt lovely. It's felt so good those few days when I just ate from our land. It was like really special. So yeah, we're going to put more banana suckers in, different varieties. At the moment we have the Ducasse, but all like the sugar bananas, which are pretty good. And we're looking to put, different varieties in, and maybe some of the more unusual and rarer bananas, because they just keep coming up. As you would know, they grow and then they have a fruit, and then that part of the banana tree dies off and a new sucker comes up. So you continually getting fruit, which is, and they seem to grow all year round as well here. We've had bananas that have been ripe at various points of the year, so that's another good crop to grow to help become sufficient.
Yes, with bananas, I have a great experience as well, because we have had major big banana families on the land that we purchased a few years ago and 2 years ago, and the feeling of there is this feeling when the land where I live and where I am connected to is nurturing me and taking care of me. It's like a hugging or something like that.
Yes, yeah. And I think that is, and it's a symbiotic relationship. And I think this is a wonderful thing. When we're eating fruit and we're planting the seeds of the fruit we're eating, and we're caring for the trees, and in return we're getting this wonderful food. I think it's a very nurturing and symbiotic relationship. And I think one of the main problems with the world today is that humans in general are living in a parasitic relationship with the planet instead of a symbiotic one. So we're taking, and we're not putting back, or we're not putting back enough. And when we start living in a way where we're, not creating rubbish for landfill sites, we're composting all our rubbish, we're not buying things in plastic, and we're having much less of an impact or a footprint. And we're also planting fruit trees, and that fruit's not just for us, a lot of the animals will share that. And yeah, I think it's just becomes this wonderful symbiotic relationship. And there's an old Buddhist adage that states every person in their lifetime should plant 5 trees. And I guess that would be to replace what we use in terms of paper and wood for construction, and also to provide food. But now, because of the huge consumerism that most people are part of, I think we would need to plant 5,000 trees in a lifetime to make up for all that we use and to put back. And I do think, yeah, planting fruit trees, having a relationship with these trees are nourishing us, and we're putting back, we're planting the seeds, we're caring for our trees, and it's something that money can't buy. Yes, you do need a certain amount of money in most cases to buy land and to start off becoming self-sufficient, but what you gain from that is priceless, and you can't pay for it. You can't pay for that feeling of connection to trees and to nature and being a part of this universe, and not just being this parasite that sucks everything out of the world and doesn't put anything back.
They say 5 trees. How many trees did you plant?
I've planted hundreds and hundreds of trees. I've lost count. I've thrown seeds. I never throw seeds away. The only time I've ever had to throw a seed away was in an airport where I couldn't take the seed with me into the country because of quarantine. And I with regret, putting seeds in a bin. I really try not to do that. If I can't plant them all, I will toss them around different places, or I will at least compost them, because, I think it's just so important to have this symbiotic relationship, and not to just, keep take all the time. So, yeah.
What are the other things what you do? You mentioned composting.
Composting is really, really important. And I think when you compost, you just have so much less waste, because so much can be composted. Cardboard, paper can be composted, cellulose. So when you get that like cellophane, that can be composted. All your fruit scraps can be composted. Grass clippings, you can break down even palm leaves and things like that into small enough pieces, and they can be composted. And when you're in a tropical or a subtropical climate, of course, your compost breaks down a lot quicker. And we have a 3-bin system. We also have like a biocycle sewage system. So what happens is there's enzymes in the biocycle. So you have to be very careful what you put down the toilets, what you use to wash, but we use all biological stuff, natural stuff anyway, so it's not an issue. And then the enzymes in the biocycle, they break down any waste, and then it gets put back on the garden. And we had when we first moved in, we didn't move the pipe around where the waste went, and it was on this chocolate sapote tree, and that tree, it just grew, it just massive, and it was so healthy because it was getting all the waste. So yeah, composting, building up the soil, I mentioned a bit about that, and putting rock dust in the soil, mushroom compost, our own compost, seaweed I think is fantastic.
We talked a lot about this phase of the journey when we plant and nurture the trees, and but there is a second or following phase when we start to harvest, and we just wake up in the morning and walk out to the garden, to the fruit forest, and harvest our breakfast and go around and see the ripening fruits and smell the ripe jackfruit and know where when we pick. So this is my dream. This is our dream. That's why we are working. And how is it? How do you see this? How in your dreams and in your life?
Yes, it's certainly a goal to be mostly self-sufficient, and I would say mostly because I'm aware that different soils have different nutrients in. So I think while I would like to be able to be completely self-sufficient, I would always also look to getting some fruit from different soils, maybe doing some kind of barter, some kind of exchange. If I wanted to get totally out of buying other fruit, but exchanging fruit with someone in a different area, because there's certain elements that certain soils are low in. Or even foraging things like pig face. Pig face is a fruit that grows on a succulent that's found in coastal areas, and it's very high in iodine and sodium and protein and calcium, which is unusual for a fruit. So yeah, I'm definitely working towards self-sufficiency, but I'm also mindful that it can be beneficial to eat fruits from different soils. Just because one area might be high in selenium, another area might be high in copper. And by just bringing in some outside fruits, I think would help to complement the whole range of micronutrients that we need. But yeah, just going out, mulberry season recently was part of that. Just going out every morning when I'm ready for breakfast and knowing my breakfast is just out there, and I can just pick it as much as I want. And that's a nice thing, not having to limit eating. And everybody's got a different amount that's ideal for them. I'm not saying you have to eat this amount or that amount, but eating what's right for you. And I think as well, what I've noticed very much with foraged or homegrown fruits is you don't need to eat as much. You're satisfied. And I think because they're much higher in micronutrients, something I've really noticed with the mulberries or with foraging blackberries when I was in the UK is that I can eat a much less than a commercially grown berry and feel satisfied. And I'm sure that's to do with the amount of nutrition. It's like, so much higher that the body's like, yeah, I've had enough now. I'm satisfied with the amount of nutrition. So that's another point that's very important with homegrown and foraged fruits. But yeah, and just being really, I'm really excited and interested in different fruit varieties, unusual fruit varieties. There's fruits that I would like to grow. I would really like to grow saffo, which I've heard about. Are you growing saffo?
Yes, we have three trees, and they are very big and beautiful.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, and did you plant those?
Yes.
Yeah,
And the
wonderful.
seedlings. And we
So
also have dabai, which is a relative of saffo.
oh, lovely. Yes, so that's one I'm really keen to grow, because I've heard wonderful things about the flavor of it, and it's just new and exciting, and I've never tried it before. So yeah, there's the staples that we have, and we have different varieties. So I think for us, staples are really going to be citrus, bananas, avocados, because we can grow different varieties for much of the year, and also they're fruits that are pretty easy to grow. But yeah, getting some of those unusual ones. We've got some ackee trees as well. So last year there was one ackee on one of the trees, and something ate it before we did. I hope it ate it when it was ripe and it didn't get sick. But yeah,
Yes.
really kind of trying to nurture. We've got 4 ackee trees altogether, and one of them is quite big and is likely to fruit again this year. So quite excited about the ackee. Yeah, so anything interesting or rare, I'm very keen to plant. We've got blackberry jam fruit, which tastes like blackberry jam. We've got peanut butter fruit, which tastes like peanut butter. So some of them more interesting, and they're both quite small shrubs. They're not like great big trees. But yeah, and it's always exciting going to a nursery or going to a market where they're selling fruit trees and thinking, what have they got? What varieties have they got? And with the avocados, we plant seedlings. I like seedlings because you don't know what you're going to get. Some people say never plant avocado seedlings because they'll take 40 years to fruit. But in our old place, we had about 6 years, and we were just starting to get really good crops from 3 or 4 seedlings. Unfortunately, then we left, so we didn't really get the bounty. But hopefully the landlord hasn't cut those trees down, and somebody at least is enjoying them. So we're planting seedlings. We're also planting grafted avocados just because that would be quicker to produce. And I got a variety Gwen a couple of weeks ago, which is grafted. Quite excited because that sounds like a really interesting variety. Fuertes as well, which are my absolute favorite avocados. So we've got a couple of those, and I'd like to get some more just to extend the season. I've got blood oranges, which fruited last year, but because it wasn't cold enough, they don't get that real dark blood color. It was just a tinge. If we have a cold winter, we could well get some blood-colored blood oranges. Yeah, and it's just, I think because we've not been here that long, it's still an adventure. The existing fruit trees that were here when we moved in, just some of them we haven't tried the fruits yet, they haven't fruited. We're sort of like, you know, looking after them, so hopefully they'll start fruiting soon, some of them that haven't fruited. But yeah, it's all a bit of an unknown adventure, and I think that's part of the fun of it.
Yes, I also find that since we have this land, that I am almost more excited, or maybe more excited in a fruit tree nursery than in a fruit market.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's always like, what have they got? Have they got anything interesting, unusual, different varieties? So yeah, and then you know, it's the whole thing of getting that tree planted, watching how it does, looking after it. And as I said before, you know, they're our friends, the fruit trees. We have a connection with them. We put love into them, and we get back beautiful fruit. And even when we don't, we still love them. There was this really old avocado tree when we moved in. It looks to be quite a few years old, really not in a brilliant condition, very old and gnarly, the bark. And bless it, the 2 years we've been here, it's flowered, it's had lots of flowers, it hasn't got any fruit, but you don't love it any less because you think maybe one day it will have fruit, but it's just growing, it's getting new leaves, it's thriving. And to see it grow from this kind of half dead looking tree into like now a thriving looking tree is just a reward in itself without even having any fruit on it.
I love this way of living when we enjoy the journey, of course, and we work for something bigger tomorrow than just a small thing today. And it totally changed my way of life and my view. And
yes, yeah, and I think that connection with the earth and the physical work, because before I moved here I was working full time and it was online work, and not being on a computer 8 hours a day, and instead working on the land, I just feel stronger, I feel healthier. You know, although the job was very useful and there's many aspects of it I really enjoyed, I never intended to do computer work long term, and not being on the computer for hours and hours every day is, I think my health has improved. And just doing the physical work, lugging hoses about, like our hoses weigh 22 kilos. And when you're pulling them about, it's like tug of war. I think I could do tug of war team now because I'm pulling hoses about all day. And just, I think, getting that grounding energy as well from connecting to the earth so much, and the smell of it, and the smells when you're growing your own fruit, the smell of the earth is wonderful. And I remember when I lived in Glasshouse Mountains, there was a lot of commercial strawberry farms, and I will never eat non-organic strawberries if I can help it, only organic or non-sprayed. And the chemical fertilizers, because they kill the soil, so there's no microbes in the soil. They kill the soil dead, and they put all this artificial fertilizer on, and the smell of it, I had to change my running route because I was going past these strawberry fields, and the amount of sprays and the chemicals in the air and the fertilizer dust, it was horrendous. It really was horrible. And when I smell the earth, in the compost, it smells good. And that's how the earth should smell. And I think also it's good for our immune systems. They say that children that grow up getting in the dirt, growing up on farms, have a much healthier immune system than kids that grow up in cities, that have antibacterial sprays in the house, that never get out and get the microbes in their bodies. Because yes, some germs can be harmful, but a lot of microbes are very, very helpful. And I think when we sort of like getting those microbes on us just through being in the garden, it's good for our health. I think also B12. I think people that grow their own fruit and they get little bits of dirt and soil and that kind of stuff, they get B12 often from that, because they're growing organically, and it's not supermarket fruit that has been treated with sulfur dioxide or washed in chemicals to preserve its life, and is devoid of any microbes. It's kind of dead on one level. Even though it's raw food, it's still dead because the microbes have been destroyed through the growing practices or the storage practices.
I have this new experience of eating, and it's kind of free way of eating, with free eating, when I just go out and it's just a tree calls me, or I feel something like a calling, and I just eat from the tree or the bush, and it's a totally different eating experience. So do you eat from your bush? Do you eat outside?
Yes, yeah, I think that's part of the experience. Like, I still remember having this Mamie sapote straight off a tree, sun warmed. My friend grew gumi chama cherries, having them sun warmed. They were like warm custard inside. Yeah, I do. The mulberries just under the tree, getting all purple splashes on you. It's just wonderful. Yeah, I do really like eating. I don't always eat outside, but often, especially if it's berries or like cherry tomatoes, I just pick them as I go along. Often when I'm doing the watering, I think, oh, there's some cherry tomatoes, and have a snack. And it's, yeah, I think that's just part of the experience, I think, as well. If we're eating outside, we can just compost the skin. If it's inedible skin, we can throw the seeds somewhere, and yeah, it's just not messy. It's really easy. And mangoes is a good one to eat outside, because all the juice can just drip everywhere. It's just, yeah, we've got mangoes coming on at the moment. Mango season will be in maybe another 6 weeks, so looking forward to that. But again, we have possums. We could have like a cyclone. Things could happen. I'm hopeful that we will have a good mango season this year, but until you're picking the mango and eating it, yeah, it's not guaranteed. But yeah, that's last year we had a fairly good mango season, but this year it's looking even better. So yeah.
Yes, your climate is better than ours for mangoes, for sure.
It's a very, very good climate for mangoes. Yeah. And what I find is that mango trees can be very hardy as well. So I've had mango trees that have suffered, like the one I was telling you about. All its leaves were lost. It was damaged. It came back. I had another little mango tree we brought with us that again was damaged, and it's coming back from like a stick. It looks like there's nothing on it. Another time I went away when we lived in Glasshouse, and the mango tree, the special Cappy's placenta mango tree, wasn't watered. It lost all its leaves. It wasn't damaged in any other way. And I just gave it seaweed. I watered it, talked to it, gave it attention. In 2 weeks, it was fully leaved again, full-size leaves in 2 weeks. And my younger son, who was upset when all the leaves had gone, he hadn't looked at the tree in 2 weeks. I think it was upsetting for him. And I said, come and look at the mango tree. Wow. So yeah, mango trees can be quite resilient, I found. So they're quite a good one. Another one is the chocolate or black sapote. That is, you can do anything to that. So my husband was cutting some other tree, pruning it, and a bit fell off, and it sliced down the middle of this chocolate sapote tree. So it was like half a tree, not all the way down, about half the way down. It was half a tree. It's totally repaired itself. if they're not watered very much, if it's very windy, they are such a good resilient tree. I would recommend chocolate or black sapotes to anybody that's in the tropics or subtropics that can grow them, just because they are very low maintenance. They're a very low maintenance tree, and they tend to crop well with some of the other tree, like an abu doesn't like the wind and it's very delicate, but chocolate sapotes are very hardy in the right climate. They really need to be in a tropical or subtropical, but in that right climate, they're very hardy and are a good one. If you've not got much experience of growing trees, I think mangoes and black or chocolate sapotes are a good couple to try.
You already have answered to my question, next question. But what would you say to someone who lives in a fruit-based diet and is ready to change his or her life and is ready to settle down, to buy a land and start to plant? What would you say to them, or how would you encourage them?
Well, I would say yes, go for it, but do your research, do your due diligence. So look into the area that you want to grow, look into the growing season, look into the soils and microclimates. Australia has such microclimates. For example, the area I live in, just a couple of kilometers away, it's very different. It can be drier, it can be wetter, it can be more windy. So really research the area you're planning to buy if you can. If you're buying sight unseen, maybe get in touch with people already living in that area and ask them lots and lots of questions, because it's a big investment. It's a big investment of your money, of your time, of your energy. So I would say really do the research into the climate, into the wind. I was researching the area we were planning to buy for many, many months before we actually moved here. I was looking at the rainfall. I was looking at the wind. The wind's a big one. If you're growing fruit trees, you don't want huge amounts of wind. We do get cyclones only about every 5 years, but in general, the wind is quite low here. That was a factor that influenced me. The water. We don't get a huge lot of rain apart from in the rainy season. Here, like December, January, February is when we get a lot of rain. The rest of the year, we don't get so much. But we have a stream and we have a solar pump and we pump from the stream. Without that, it would make it much more challenging here outside of the wet season. So look into the precipitation, look into if it's got a bore or a dam, or if you can put a bore in, or if you've got a river that you can pump from. So look at all these factors, research well before you decide to buy that area. If you've got friends that are living in the area, that's great. You can ask them about it. But bear in mind that in many countries, there are microclimates. An area 2 or 3 kilometers away might be very, very different in terms of wind, in terms of rain, in terms of temperatures. They can vary depending on many, many factors. You can also, for many areas, look at government soil charts to see what the soil is in your area. They can vary from house to house, almost from property to property. So you can look at soil resources maps to see what the soil is. Because the soil is a vital thing. If you're buying a property that the soil has been built up, that's a huge benefit. If people have already been growing fruit and have built the soil up, that's a great advantage. If it's an area that the soil's quite poor, you might have to put a lot of time and resources into building up your soil, and that can take years and years. So there's a lot of homework to be done. I would say definitely go for it, but prepare yourself, do your research, because it's especially if you think, well, this is going to be the place that I'm going to be living for, hopefully for many, many years. Make sure it's a decent place, because the soil and the weather, the geology, huge factors in determining where you're going to be, as well as community. If you want a community of other people that are doing similar things, look into that. If you want to be near other people that are self-sufficient, other people that are on a fruit-based diet, then that can be also a factor. But yeah, go for it, really go for it. And it's hard work, but it pays you back. Sometimes at the end of the day, I'll be physically tired in a nice way because I've been weeding or moving hoses around, working on the garden, but it's a very nice kind of tired. It's not the same kind of tired you get from being in an office for 8 hours a day, or being on a computer for 8 hours a day, or being in a stressful job with challenges. It is, yeah, it's a very holistic way of living, I feel, and that I would definitely recommend it, but do your research first. That's what I would say, into the type of place that you want to move to, and look at all the factors that will determine how easy it is. I think any area can be turned into a fruit forest, but it can take a lot of years for somewhere with poor soil or a more challenging climate.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. What is your favorite fruit? I kept this question to the end. So can you say one fruit that makes your heart dance?
My very favourite fruit, which sadly I can't grow here, is Charente melon, which is from France, from Provence, although they do grow it in some areas in the United States. And it can be grown in the more temperate, more Mediterranean areas of Australia. I have tried to grow it in the subtropics and it gets too mildewy. The Charente melon is an heirloom melon. The guy, Alexander Dumas, I think, who wrote the Three Musketeers, he was so fond of the Charente melon that he offered a whole collection of his works to the local municipality of where the Charente melon grows, in exchange for 12 melons a year, every year. They say that once you taste it, you're enchanted, which I agree with. It's an orange-fleshed melon that has such a beautiful perfume that if you have a few in a bowl, your whole house will smell of this delicious smell. Some have very thin skin, and I've actually eaten the skin. Some Charente melons I have eaten the skin of. So eaten all of the melon apart from the seeds. If you can grow it, if you ever go to Provence in melon season, they have a melon festival every year. Cavaillon, which is where the heart of melon growing, has a 9-ton concrete statue of a melon, because the melon is so important to that area. And what I really appreciate about France is how they care for their fruit. You go into a fruit shop and you will buy a Charente melon, and it will be in a little cardboard box with the name of the grower on, or a little bag, and it's so cared for. You can tell it's so loved, it's so precious. It's not just piled up and, you know, on a supermarket shelf. It is treasured and cherished. And yeah, I love Charente melons. When I've gone back to the UK, I have sourced them from France. When I've been in New York, I have got them from Union Square Market, where they do grow them in some areas of New York State, the warmer areas. But yeah, it's the Charente melon, which is native to Provence in France. It's gorgeous. Yeah. That would be my last supper, I think. If I could choose my last supper, it would probably be Charente melon, figs, and durian, I think.
Durian, yes. So you love durian as well?
Yes, I love durian. Since I first tried it, I've loved durian. And I'd heard a lot about it. I'd already been on a fruit diet, I think, for about 6 years before I tried my first durian, because I was living in the UK. And for my 30th birthday, a couple of friends got together and bought me a fresh Thai durian, because they were imported into the UK fresh. And for me, it was love at first sniff. I thought, how can people say it smells horrible? And I almost gave myself a headache trying to think, how can anybody think this smell is horrible? So I loved the smell. I also loved the taste right from the beginning. And one of the friends who had helped buy the durian for my birthday had wrapped it in a shirt. And after I'd eaten the durian, I took the shirt to bed with me for 2 days afterwards, because it smelled of durian. And I wasn't ready to let go of that wonderful smell. So it was a really good durian. It was a Thai monthong, a good sized one. And it was very, very good. So my first durian experience, fortunately, was a good one. It was great. And so then I would occasionally have fresh imported Thai Monthong durians, but they were very expensive and it was always a treat. But yeah, I was just like, wow. And then the first time I was in the tropics was in Bali. I went to Bali 7 times. When my elder son was kind of aged 10 to 12, and yeah, got proper fresh durian from Bali. Usually we aim to go in the durian season, and yeah, just loved it and really, really enjoyed eating. I think the best durian I had in Bali was one that had just fallen off a tree. Rather than buying it from the sellers, we went, this guy said, I'll show you where there's some durian trees, and he said there's a durian on the floor, and I don't really think we should have taken it because I guess it would have been somebody's durian. But anyway, he said, oh, can take this. And it was fabulous, really, really good. Yeah, and then when I came to Australia, I always had dreams of trying fresh Australian durian. We lived in southeast Queensland, and it only really grows in far north Queensland and in the Northern Territories, which are the tropical areas of Australia. And I remember writing to this man who'd got durian saying, do you send it to southeast Queensland? He said, they're falling off the trees here, just come up to far north Queensland. Well, it took me a while to take his advice, but yes, finally I am in far north Queensland, and last durian season wasn't so good. Didn't actually have any fresh Australian durians last season, but the year before got lots of nice durian, and I've planted the seeds. I don't think they'll ever fruit here, but I put them in a little greenhouse over the winter. I didn't heat them, but they survived, and they're just, doing pretty well. They'll be happy now we're coming into, the peak of summer here in Australia. So yeah, and it's so exciting seeing them grow because they're almost prehistoric. I think durian seedlings, they have a very thick sprout that comes up, and yeah, just a beautiful tree, beautiful seedling. So yeah, I really love durian. I do sometimes get frozen Malaysian Musang King from Cairns. They sell it in Chinatown there. So I do have non-Australian durian. Australian quarantine laws don't allow fresh durian in from other countries. So the only durians we can get apart from Australian durians are frozen, but there's some quite good quality frozen durians. So I do have it occasionally, but I'm looking forward to the Australian durian season and getting some fresh durians. And yeah, I would love to be able to grow it myself. If I was living in the tropics, I'd be growing it for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for joining me. I really loved this conversation, and I really didn't think that I can just listen to someone for this long, but I really enjoyed every word you said, and it was amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the interview. I very much enjoyed it. Thank you for asking me to talk with you today.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you, because this message that, well, we lived a fruit-based diet for a while in the city and in normal life, and I found it a little bit overwhelming, but moving to my own place and started to plant my own trees totally changed this experience, and it just became so natural and easy. And if there is a message I would like to share, is this one, that it can be so nice and easy and fun, just like you told us. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I would agree. It is fun, it's enjoyable, it's hard work, but sometimes to really enjoy something, you need to have put that work in, and then you really appreciate it. And the connection with the universe, I think, doing this is priceless. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.